Susana, welcome to the Coach's Journey podcast.
Thank you, Rob. It's really a pleasure to be here. Thank you for inviting me and to connect after, all these years.
I know it was a slightly shocking thing to me actually to look, and like I was on LinkedIn just before. So listeners, Susana and I have never spoken on a video or audio call until about 15 minutes ago. But we have been messaging since 2017, Susana. So 6 years of on and off, and a lot of messages in 2017 and 2018 and various different things over the years, which we might touch on. But like you say, it's I find myself feeling like, in fact, this was in one of our messages. Isn't it strange to have these messages, and what a strange and kind of wonderful thing that the internet can create those connections in a quite slightly strange way. But I feel really I got a big smile on my face that we're now having this conversation, and not only that, but I'm going to get to interview you to talk about yourself and your journey, and that's partly how we're going to get to know each other even better. So it's very lovely to have you here.
Yeah, thank you again.
Yeah, and so look, the way we often start this podcast, the way I often start these interviews, is, when did you first come across coaching as a thing?
Okay, so I came across coaching back in 2009 as a client, so as a coachee. And it was a very interesting kind of awakening call, because I realized that in order for someone professional to really help me and have an impact in my life, this person does not necessarily need to know me. So this was in 2009. So, and I was really, really far away from thinking I would ever become a coach. Yeah.
What was it? Why did you end up having coaching at that point? Was it a professional development or?
Yeah. It was professional development. So it was offered by while I was collaborating in a finance organization, and I was part of this project. So everybody in the project, so I was responsible for the part of the project. So, and there was this coaching program that were offered to everybody that were participating in that project. Around leadership, around conflict management, basically around a leadership skill development.
Yeah. And so, what did you remember now? What did you take away from that engagement? Like, what did you learn? What were the insights?
I don't remember the particular things that I took away with, but the general feeling of how at the end of these coaching sessions, I still wanted to explore more, and how my insights and things that we have covered during the session were still working on the back of my mind, and the insights and the progress really happened in between sessions. So this is what I recall. And so for me, so my background is in the IT. So, very scientific oriented, and I need data to really recognize the value in something. That was kind of like question mark for me. And it was, I resisted at first to really letting myself go and speak openly about, challenges. I think I understand from that moment on, I think until today even, that there was this great barrier between the way that I allow myself to access my emotions. And this was something that I'm still working on it since then, right? At that moment, I just faced this hard glass, and it was it was like that experience of okay, I don't really know how this works, but it is working.
Yeah, which, like you say, compared to the scientific tech focused thing where you can work out why, like often the job I imagine was work out why it works or why it doesn't work and know that and then change things. And suddenly you've got this thing which is like, well, this is definitely working. And I love that thing you said about the insights happening between sessions. I think I've read that or heard somebody say something similar to that before, but I wonder if, I think for coaches sometimes that's a little hard a thing to hold because, you know, like, especially, I don't know, sometimes you have sessions which feel where you can see the insights happening for somebody. And sometimes you have them where, at least I do, where I can't really see the insights happening for somebody. And so to then trust that things might happen between sessions is quite hard. So to hear you telling that story as a client, that's a part of how you experienced coaching that time, that feels really valuable.
Yes. Yeah, and going back to that you know, like the scientific part, of course, this, so my background, so academic background is in the IT, so I'm an engineer, so IT engineer. But one of the things that has always fascinated me is how, you know, human brain works. So I have never, one of the areas that I thought about, you know, investing while I was studying was in the robotics, but for somehow it didn't happen. But this, how the brain works, it was something that really got me curious about. And it was interesting to understand that even though the person, my coach, had no background in the, you know, like psychology or psychiatric area, she could have an impact on me, on my, you know, and I was able to shift my behaviors, or at least got me, you know, reflect on it, on those, and what could I do to make, you know, to have a different result, a different impact.
Yeah. And looking back, from now, with thousands of hours of coaching behind you, what is it that, like, what do you think it is about coaching, which people who, I mean, like, you know, like me, maybe like you, I don't know if you've done psychology specific training or just coaching training, but like your coach then, like me now, people who don't have the academic knowledge in those things, although they may, like I may have read lots of things about it. What is it about coaching that enables us to help people through those behavior changes?
That's an interesting question. Well, I would say something that it might come across as a very simplistic answer, but I think the fact that we are there able to really focus on them and listening to what they have to say, creating that safe space, I think that's already huge.
Yeah.
Because we are not,
No, go.
but we are not friends. We don't have, you know, there is no conflict of interest here. So we are just like another human being on the other side who's really, you know, totally there at their disposal, listening, really listening to them, interested in what they have to share. And the mere fact, at least my experience has been, you know, taught me that, show me that, is that when we put into words, so put outside what we think, what's inside our minds, it's already a transformation going on. So it's a lot about holding the space for that to happen.
Yeah, it's beautiful. The thing I was going to say before, which I think still is worth saying, I got this flash when you were talking of just how, you know, in a way, it just makes complete sense that it would be easier to change because the way you described it so clearly, because suddenly instead of having one person's brain and self trying to work on the behavior change, you've like doubled that. And it's just so rare that, you know, the way you put together those aspects of coaching, then, you know, it is just so rare to have somebody without the conflict of interests, with the pure space, with the safety. And yeah, it does make sense in so many ways. But Susana, so Yeah, you've said a little bit. I don't know if you want to put any more in. So about before that then. So you were working, did you say, were you in finance, in technology by this point when you had that? I'm not sure if you said that. Sorry, I might have missed it.
Yeah, yeah. So
Yeah.
when I stumble, I usually say I stumble upon coaching, literally. So my background is in the IT. I started out my formal professional activity, as a software developer. So I moved into business consultancy, and then as a leader, so having people in the bank industry. So this was my trajectory. So I've always worked in multinational organizations, always on the tech side, right? So even though when I was in my last organization role, so I was responsible for a department. I had a team, and this coaching in 2009 happened when I had just joined that organization, and I was creating a department, and there was a lot of transformation going on.
And so then what happened next? You had this sense that, like, oh wow, something's happening here, and this person isn't even doesn't have a background in psychology, and yet somehow things are changing. It's like, I don't know what it is, I don't know how it works, but it works.
Yeah.
What happened? I know that it wasn't straight away that you ran off and did a coaching training. So what happened next?
So next, fortunately, I was in an organization that was investing on coaching, and they had both, internal and external.
And do you know why they were doing that? Like, because if this is 2009-10, like, not, the financial crisis has just happened. So a lot of people, like, and I've spoken to people before who said that was the point where in some organizations, the investing in people or the consultancy or that kind of development stuff, that went down. And also it's quite early really for organizations to be taking that viewpoint.
That's true. So I guess the CEO was a very conscious woman, and she had experienced herself the power of coaching. And so I believe that she brought that, having being very conscious that there is a lot of that coaching is a very powerful tool, right? So the transformation that the organization was going through, it made it totally sense. I mean, to use it, it would be crazy not to do it, right? Because she already had come across it.
Yeah. And is this, this may not be relevant, or you may not want to say, but is this Santander at the time? Like, where are you at this point? Yeah.
So it was Santander. I'm as a business consultant, I worked with IBM. During that time, I took a leave of absence, and I went to be an expat in Angola. I've been there 2 years, working and living there. This was really an adventure. Wow. You might think that, only organizations, multinational, corporate style, but I love adventure, and I really enjoyed that experience. So I came back, and then I was invited to go to Santander. So it was now ISBAN does not exist anymore. So it was the tech arm of Santander's, and then they incorporated the team into the bank. So that's in that process in 2018. This is when I left. So it was part of Santander's group.
So sorry, but I think a few minutes ago I interrupted you in the middle of answering one of my questions, which was, so you were saying that there was coaching going on in Santander probably because of the CEO and her experience of it. And so you continued to get coaching, or what happened next? So
what happened next is that I had the fortune to really have an internal. She was mixed internal external. So she worked with me and my team in team coaching, and it was so powerful. And there was like this shift that happened towards the performance of my team, how they were engaged, how things have really shifted. So not only I have developed myself as the leader, but also the team together, we evolved with this team coaching, I also had the opportunity to participate as a team member, because that by then the CEO has changed, and the new leader, he engaged in the team coaching. So I was responding to the CEO. So, and the board was also went also through a team coaching program. So it was very exciting to continuously be in contact with coaching, but from like a distance, from a client's perspective, right? So this is went until I think it was 2012 or 13, where again here working in male-dominated environments, I really experienced the glass ceiling. So even though I need challenges, so I crave on challenges. I need to be really having this feeling of developing myself, growing, and even though I was reaching out for opportunities, there seemed to be no yes coming my way. So when there was a colleague from the board, so a colleague of mine, that he had signed up to do this ICF certified coaching training, and he could not attend it due to other priorities, professional priorities. And the HR department director mentioned who would like to attend this, and I said, I will do it. The least I would gain from that would be to develop myself as a leader coach. And by then I knew that there was only, good things coming on. So, okay, I will do it. So this is how I actually, stumble upon coaching again. And from the minute that I started to have this training, and I'm sure you also know about it, Robbie. So from the early start, we are invited to have our own clients, and you practice with other people on the training. And I started to realize that coaching was something that really resonated with me. It was like a call, and so that was it. So the training lasted for like 6 months. So we had like roughly a week per month, and then in between those trainings we had homework to do, teamwork to do, and I found myself starting to coaching right there. So once I completed the training, I became part of the coaching program as an internal coach of the organization.
Yeah.
So this was back in 2013. Almost 10 years ago. I cannot believe it.
I know. Time passes, doesn't it? There's a couple of things I want to ask about, Susana. So much in there. The first one is just to ask a little bit about that team coaching experience. We might talk more about this later on, but I feel like even across 50 plus episodes of this show, we haven't talked enough about team coaching as a part of that. And so really what I'm curious about is, if you want to bring it to what you do now, or team coaching you've thought about more recently, that could be it. But what I was actually curious about was, how did it actually look to be doing the team coaching? How much was there one-to-one time? Was it all the team together with the coach? Like, what practically happened in that team coaching experience?
Nowadays I realize that it's much more powerful if you have team coaching and individual coaching going in parallel. I think that really is it enhances the impact of the team coaching. But back then it was only team coaching, because my team were partly from the organization, and some of the other people on the team was from outside the organization. I think that was partly the reason for that, but also because I got to have my the CEO agreement for all the time that we were putting aside for the team coaching. So I also had to negotiate that, and since it was not like it was my option, right? It was not something that it was offered by the organization. It was something that I asked approval for. So I really insisted that I would like to do that. So it was like only team coaching. And what was your question again? I'm not sure if I am answering.
Yeah, I mean, I think you've answered it. It was like, what? I mean, what did it look like? I guess maybe you could say a bit more about how often it happened. What do you remember being? It sounds like you and the team both grew through that. Like, I'm just curious about that experience, really.
Yeah, so I really loved that experience. In fact, then after that, I used the same approach with other clients. So for instance, let me just say this, that and I go back to that question that you asked me, is that while I was, since the moment that I've started to decided to be part of the internal team coaching program as an internal coach, I also agree with the CEO that I could pursue my private clients because there were no conflict of interest. So I also do that. And that was a moment where I also had the opportunity to put, in practice what I have experienced myself as the leader of the team. It was really, really powerful. So this team coaching had a process. It's called the strategic visioning, and it really takes the team, from the past to the present and to the future, and it's really, really, really powerful, and it's really transformative, and it really helps you as a leader and team to reach new levels of not only performance but engagement, of relationship, of alignment. It's amazing, the transformation power that it brings. So I think we had, like, I don't know, maybe 5 or 6 sessions. Of course, the coach that led that process, she was also very how do you say, she was also a very good coach, right? So she she led us through that process in a very smoothly way, and it was really very, very impactful. I have to say that I think I was the typical technical person, individual contributor that then assumes a leadership role and has no skills for it. So I realized how many mistakes, like micromanaging, like not needing to have the control, having the answers to everything, and how that unleashed my leadership power and created space for my team to grow and to be more accountable, more responsible, and feel more empowered as well.
Yeah, it's a great story and reminder, really. And it's like, I always think when people talk about the tech industry and individual contributors moving up to management roles, I always remember that it's not just tech, because one of my jobs was in the Royal Opera House in London before I came to coaching. And I remember it happened there, in the technical department or the props department or the scene department. Somebody would get promoted a lot because of their technical talents, not just because of that, but partly because of that. And then it's a really different thing managing a team of 20 prop makers, just like it's a different thing managing a team of 20 developers, to being a prop maker or a developer. So it is that, it's one of those like crunch points, isn't it? And again, when I think back on my career pre-coaching, the times when I most wish I'd had coaching were those times when there was a step up, a steep learning, and I was basically out of my depth. And I was lucky that I basically did have coaches in some ways, like a mentor here or a manager there, without whom it would have been so much harder. But I really hear that. I wanted to catch a thing you said, though, Susana, which is that, because I know you do, or at least I think you do, you still do team coaching now, or you still use that sometimes, but that thing that you said there, you think it's more powerful with one-to-one work running alongside it. So the question could either be, when you work with teams now, if you get the total choice, how would you structure that with those two things running alongside? Or in that, or how do you do it and how does it end up happening for you these days?
Yes, usually I offer that option because it's the most powerful. And even though there might not be, that many individual one-on-one sessions, what I figure is that what I notice is that having like in between the team coaching sessions, having individual coaching sessions really helps on, addressing topics that maybe will be left and sad, or really rough edges that need to be addressed. And this is how I design it, is to have individual coaching sessions in between the team sessions.
Did you just stumble across that, or did you find somebody else that was doing it, or how did you have that insight?
Well, I think we've learned along the way, right? Yes, maybe I have been participating. I had another colleague coach that mentioned that how lucky we are when we forgot our sources, right? So some of them I do recall, and I appreciate them, and I still have this sense of appreciation, and I'm feeling grateful for learning with them, having the possibility to learning with them. But other things, I think you are just speaking along the way. So I think it was maybe not that you're asking me. Maybe it was I participated in something in the project. Well, I was not doing the team coaching. I was just a coach, and I understood how the dynamic was working, right? So, and that how important, because I also got that feedback, those individual sessions were in between those team sessions.
Yeah, really interesting. And this is quite detailed, so but I think it is really interesting. I think for listeners, I had a guest called John Monks, who his company runs some team coaching as well. And I think on the interview I did with him, we talked a bit about this. So I know what he said, I think. But for you, it sounds like you've been in a situation where the team coach was one person, but the one-to-one coaches were somebody else. Yeah. Do you have a gut feeling or a way that you like to work? Would you rather it was the same person or group of people doing both, or does it not matter? Or what's your experience of that?
Well, I tend to prefer to be, to be me who is leading, every pieces of the program, because then I have more control on the results. And as you know, for us coaches, is our credibility, and also our image that is at stake. So when I engage with other colleagues, I have to, they are people who I really trust. But I guess that this notion of having this control might tend, in my case, to be the one who handles every piece, if I have availability, of course. Though I understand that the other option can also be very powerful, right? So the thing is that because I'm not, like a people person, for me, I get more pleasure from the individual coaching sessions than from the team coaching sessions. Even though my experience in the teams is really, like amazing, because I feel that my power as a coach is like, potentialized, right? It grows exponentially, because you can, a small or a exercise team dynamic can really, make a lot of impact on different people. And you see all these combined at the same time is really like, it's huge. So for me, it's also a possibility, an opportunity for me to step out of my comfort zone and to deal with the unknown, right? Because on one-on-one, that is pretty much, controlled. Whilst when you are with a team with several people, right, you cannot have control of how, that will take you. So being able to be present in the moment, follow your instinct, and respond, and believe that, whatever response you will have to offer to that team is what the universe is asking for. can really be very, powerful and addictive. Addictive.
Yeah. I had this insight, this thought earlier this year that something like this, the most meaningful or like the peaks, my most enjoyable or meaningful peaks of my work in the last year had been things with groups or teams. But that it was also kind of, for me, exhausting and draining. Like I almost couldn't have done it. Like, I'm not sure I didn't do a huge amount last year, but I almost couldn't have done any more than I did. So it's like, for me, I can hear an echo of that in what you're saying. There is something really, I mean, it is a different level of, there's a lot of relationships, a lot of huge number of dynamics and textures that are present when there's even a handful of people, let alone, a bigger team or a bigger group compared to one-to-one. So there is something, there is something kind of addicting about it. And it's interesting, my memory, I think I've heard someone, it might have been John Monks, who I mentioned, talk about like having a person or people that do both as well. I think that was his take, or somebody similar's, because it means that it's not just control, right? You're also aware, you have the awareness, it's all channeled through you. Whereas otherwise, and I get this on some of the leadership programs that I both coach and facilitate on, the coaching, the coaching is usually on those programs, the ones I work on at the moment, aren't the facilitators of the workshop. So a cohort of people does a set of workshops, and alongside it has a set of coaching sessions. But there isn't an overlap of people. And there's some good things about that, but it does mean that it's hard to combine that awareness without breaching confidentiality or without, whilst preserving the different containers. So I think it's a really interesting questions to ask. Of course, like you mentioned, there's a kind of scale or availability part of it as well.
Yeah, but it's true. I mean, that awareness has a positive and also not so, positive side, because then so, things are present in your mind, and of course that impacts your judgment, impacts the way you see people. So sometimes I can see that being a facilitator in the team coaching and not doing the individual coaching might be beneficial, might make it easier for you to have that distance.
It's really interesting. My gut feeling is like everything it depends, and there's times when one is good and one is the other. But yeah, that's a nice reflection. But so let me just check I got it, to zoom back to your story or swing back to that. So you did, I love, by the way, I don't think I said this, what an amazing part of your story that this guy just dropped out of the training because of his other commitments, and somebody said, "You want to do it?" And you said yes. And then here we are 10 years later, thousands of coaching hours later, MCC, all that kind of thing, coaching business, all these kind of things. I love it that I mean, I doubt that life turned on that, but it's like humans like stories, right? So it's nice to have that kind of what do you call it, sliding doors thing. But so, and you then, when you came back, you said, I think you just said, pretty much straight away from the training, you stepped into the internal coaching team as what, alongside the other work you were doing, or instead of it? Alongside.
So I would roughly dedicate myself, 1 day per week to coaching. Both individual coaching, and also we had group coaching focusing on leadership development. And so that enabled me to, and also have my private clients, because, it was not the intention that I would pursue my coaching career. The reason why I engaged in that training was to develop, myself first. It was to develop my leadership skills, and it was, to step into some opportunity that just, showed in my, in the university, in the world.
And you said, I think this is what you said, that also there was this thing about the glass ceiling and feeling like, how am I going to progress and learn? And well, here's an opportunity to learn, even if I can't progress.
Exactly. I already had expired my, my, how do you say, my credits, because I already had asked to go to, for instance, Harvard Business School for, for a training. So, and I did that. So I already had, no more training coming more, not that side, like an investment from the organization. So this was really a huge opportunity for me. So yes, so going back to your question, so I did accumulated. So alongside my managerial role, I would dedicate myself to coaching, not only within the organization, but also outside. So I kept investing on coaching, on training, on credentials, right, by myself. So from that moment on, there was no investment from the organization on my, coaching development. That was always also, that was all on my side. Because I really, as I said, so coaching really for me was like a call. It was something that I could not ignore, and really, resonated that much with me, and really having this impact on others. It's so humbling, and at the same time, it really is a source of joy, right? Being able to do that. For me, at least, it was what moved me to do it, to continue to invest on my development. I guess also on the other side, because I'm like on the tech side, background and scientific way. So I needed to continue feel that I was developing myself in terms of acquiring competencies and acquiring skills, and the credential part. I think I also needed to to legitimate myself to be a coach, right? Because even for me, I was like, how come I am a coach right now? What a transformation, right? How do I justify myself that I'm, that I'm actually, doing it? Yeah.
Yeah, so much there that I could ask about, and maybe we will at different times. But I'm really curious, like, I don't know if this is a question that'll bring anything up, and if it doesn't, that's perfect. But I was kind of touched and taken in there with you as you talked about coaching as a source of joy, and you talked about it before, this thing calling to you, and then you did it yourself. You then went to, but I came from tech, and I'm not, I did maths at university, and so I know that these things, they're not obvious, right? The connections that we have and the way that lives pan out. But was it completely a surprise to you that something like this would give you that joy, or looking back, were there kind of signs earlier that you just hadn't caught?
No signs, Robbie, as I mentioned, that I can make the connection with was, my interest about it, and how the brain works, and whether, psychology was something that I would like to pursue. But I think I'm an engineer, so I'm basically curious about things, and never stopped asking why, and so there was no clue of any kind. Also, I am an introvert person, and I remember that I was very happy, when I was started my professional activity as a software developer, and even along the next the initial years where I assumed responsibility for more, but still being my own kind of boss, and working by myself, developing, being responsible for modules, for instance, but being basically being myself, and I developing software, working on the perfecting it, and trying to make it as elegant as possible. So I'm this kind of introvert person who would be okay just by themselves, and the challenge, mental challenge of the task at hand. So it was a total surprise, because I don't see myself as also as a people person, that I would get so caught. And for me, it was so interesting, this dynamic that happens in the coaching conversation, in the coaching dynamic. So it came as a surprise to me, actually.
Yeah, I think I'm not sure I buy that. I kind of know what you're talking about. I'm not sure I buy that you're not a people person, right? It's a total, just to give this feedback in case no one's given it before, although I know they have, it's like a total joy and ease to spend time with you, right? And we've never done this before. We might talk about the messages we've exchanged later, but we have exchanged messages. But so there is a people there's some kind of people person in you, but I kind of hear that there's also this person that likes being, likes being by themselves, doing the development work, and that probably likes being by yourself now sometimes, and doesn't so much like finds, I mean, you kind of referenced it, finds the team, the working with the group of people as a team different or more difficult, or takes more energy. But what's that, if you zoom in on that, some kind of that, whatever distinction it is you're making there about not being a people person, is there anything more you can say about that to kind of make your experience of that?
Oh, well, when I say I'm not a people person, is that I'm not, I don't know, I'm not very good at small talk. I'm not very good, in a place full of people to initiate conversation. I tend to shy away from networking. So this is what I meant when I say I'm not, like a people person. Professionally, when we are in a meeting, we have, a goal for that meeting. So let's, just dive into that. And so I'm not spending a lot of, this relationship building dynamic kind of situations where, someone who's more people driven may be more, easily drawn to.
Yeah. I just got a little, I love that. And Susana, I just know that a load of people listening will be thinking, yes, that's exactly what I'm like. And I got a little flash there of, I was laughing at the small talk thing. I kind of remember when I was about 20, I think, like kind of up until that point, like I didn't dislike going to parties or hanging out in groups, but I sometimes found it really, really hard. And I kind of remember the key moment was when I realized it was within my power to influence the conversations, which essentially what I would do was stop them being small talk and turn them into big talk or deep talk or whatever as fast as possible, because then I would be interested and I could zoom in. Whereas otherwise, there's something at that point. I think I feel differently now. I think I've definitely grown my ability to do that. But that was quite a big moment, that small talk thing. And I think a lot of coaches, coaching doesn't really deal in small talk. It deals in something different. So I think probably a lot of coaches will identify with that. I want to catch as well. You said that, and so you were given a day a week, or you're able to negotiate a day a week to do coaching alongside the other work. And I want to come back to the kind of private clients bit of that later. But you talked a bit about doing group coaching at that point as well. And again, I don't know if you do that now, but I wonder if I was doing some group coaching this morning, and as I was introducing it to the kind of leaders who I'm doing it with, I realized that I have kind of made up how I do group coaching based on group coaching that I've been part of as a client. And so I suspect that I do it somewhat the same as everybody and somewhat differently. But I'm really curious, like, how do you work in a group coaching environment? What does group coaching mean to you? And also, like, really interesting to be doing that quite early in the journey. And with some organizational infrastructure around you. And I'm curious. So I guess there's lots of questions in there. It's like, how do you think about group coaching? How did you do it then? And what was it like to do it in that environment with the organization around you?
So there are different approaches to group coaching. I know that now, right? Today, I use different possibilities for group coaching. There are more open and structured ones. And the ones that I did back then were while I was an internal coach. So it were like, for instance, with the project managers of that organization, right? So that you could even argue whether that were pure group coaching, because there was an intention, right? So there was a topic for each session. And actually that was led alongside with another internal coach. So we created together this law, which was, learning on leadership, approach that addresses a lot of, different topics. So there was a specific topic for every session. And there was this initial part where we shared some content, to just bring our minds around, a certain either theory or highlight, particular aspects of the topic, And then we would open up for participation from the group, and we added then this group conversations, maybe sometimes small groups. We divided into small groups so that they were able to then, discuss and a particular topic and then come together in a team. So this is a possibility for a group coaching. If we are being pure ICF coaches, maybe we could, argue whether that initial sharing of some information is coaching or not. For me, it was at the time, and it works. I also understand that there are other possibilities for group coaching that I find very powerful. For instance, you really create the space, and you are just a facilitator there. And the topic that everybody is invited to bring to that coaching, to that group coaching session is, what are they struggling with? And they are asking, their peers to help them. So with, suggestions, what would they do on their side? And I found that to be very, very powerful as well. So I wouldn't say one is better than the other. There are different approaches, these two, right? And I think they have a place and bring value to individual development.
Yeah, and in a way, it feels like a little bit like the conversation we had about team coaching. There's just all these tools that we have and ways to work with a group of people, and all of them can be really useful. And like, I don't know, I can imagine being the project managers that having some of those bits of content, I sometimes think this when I'm, I always have to remember that, if you're meeting a group of people or an individual who has never encountered the idea of professional development or personal development, then they won't have some of the building blocks that someone like you or I, after, in your case, 10 years of coaching, will have come across 10 years ago or 9 years ago or 8 years ago and internalized by now. And so to have some structure must be wonderful. And also in the other example you gave, to kind of tap the experience of the group and have that facilitation. One of the ways, it's actually a bit embarrassing now, because probably about when we first started messaging, so like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, I shared me doing a group coaching session on YouTube, so people can watch that if they want to. We'll put a link in the show notes. I say it's a bit embarrassing. I haven't watched it for a long time. People say really nice things about it, and it's got a surprising number of views, I think, because there just aren't that many full group coaching sessions on YouTube. So people can watch a little bit of an old version of me running a group coaching session, or the people who know about it, the Coach's Journey community is how I do that now. One of the things I love doing is, and it was fun to do this today, is, mostly when I'm doing group coaching these days, I coach the individuals in front of the group, trusting that when you coach each individual, and partly setting up the container to do this, there are insights for the other members. And actually what I've discovered is, my assumption was that works best, which maybe it does, when the people have something in common. So for example, in the Coach's Journey community, it's a group of coaches who want to think about building their business and thriving as people while they are coaching and that kind of thing. They have quite a lot in common. And so the challenges they bring may have quite a lot of overlap. But actually what I've found is, because everybody who comes to a group coaching session is a human, they all have quite a lot of things in common anyway. And so I'm just getting that sense, I guess I'm sharing that to put that extra, for people who are listening, to put that extra or a third lens on group coaching. It's a really interesting, it feels really interesting that there's kind of so much at our fingertips. And maybe, like you said, if we were sitting here as ICF credentialed coaches thinking, which we could do, thinking like, what does it have to be an ICF group coaching session? We might get slightly different answers. But if we're sitting here as two people interested in helping a group of people grow and develop, then what's fun is you've got all these different ways of doing that, and you can kind of deploy them in different ways.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that also ICF has been growing and developing, and also being open to other ways of doing things, right? And I find also very interesting as well. But I'm always very conscious, and if talking about ICF, I'm always very conscious about being as clean as possible in my questions and the way that I address the situation, and bring as little as possible of my world to that space. As little as that as it is human possible, right? Because I mean, I have my own lens, I am myself, so I have my own bias, I have my own perspective on things. So but I have this on the back of my mind.
Yeah. And I could give my answer to this question, and probably everyone listening could, but for you, why is that important?
Because you don't want to bring, you do not have this judgmental perspective. You want to be open, and you want to allow as many perspectives as possible to have a room, right, to flourish, right? So if you bring your world to that space, you are like conditioning what is possible to happen, and I am there to be like a tool for them, and so this is why I want to, I feel it's important. Also, there's this risk of projection, right? So my ideas and what is said. So yeah, so this is my thought. Of course, that even though you haven't asked me, but I'm going there anyway, which is, even though as a coach we know that it doesn't have to, you don't, as a coach, you don't need to know about your client's industry or your client's particular particularities of their role. I have found that it has been hugely useful for me, all my experience in organizations and multinationals, and moving and starting out as a single developer, as a single contributor, moving on to responsibilities in the consultancy industry, having responsibilities as a leader, as a woman, being confronted with that glass ceiling. So I find that my experience on that is an asset, and sometimes I use it. Yeah. Of course, after asking for permission, and and exploring other possibilities. So this is not the main focus of a given coaching dynamic, whether it's a group coaching, a team coaching, or individual coaching. But my experience tells me that this has been a huge benefit also that I can offer to my clients.
Yeah, yeah, and you've touched on it a couple of times now. This this experience you have of being a woman in, I guess, maybe like it's like worse. It's like the overlap of two male-dominated industries, tech and finance, right? Yes. And 10 years ago. And I wonder, how has that experience specifically played into, influenced, been a part of your coaching and your journey as a coach?
That's a very interesting question. So I actually am grateful for that to have happened, because otherwise I wouldn't stumbled upon coaching.
Right.
Because I would have like this, opportunities career-wise. So I actually am, it's like, what we also invite our coaches, to look at the possibilities, the good on the positive things on what is happening. So seeing that as an opportunity. And as I was hearing your, asking that question, I was thinking that actually I've been in the male-dominated environment since very, young age, because, I'd chosen engineering. At, I don't know, maybe I was like 15 or 16, right? And I was influenced by my father. So from a very early, age, I have been in a context where there are more, colleagues, guys, than there are, colleagues, women, right? Women. So in college, I remember I had this, this teacher, and so there was a part of the technological, yes, class, and he used to say that, that energy and current in this, there is this resistance, there is a tension, and there is a current. And he said that the current was it was like a woman. It was, smart, because it chose the less resistant path. So it was like these details that I faced since very early, when I was even studying. There was another class where the teacher, used to call me like Susana, and my colleagues, guys, they used to use their last name. And I remember that I was, provoking him, and I've always been very outspoken, for the good and for the bad, right? And I said, so, but that's discrimination. And it was a very dear teacher. And I said, that is discrimination. And he was like looking at me, and he said, okay, but this is good discrimination, Susana. I said, no, it's not good nor bad discrimination. So I guess I was like being very outspoken and facing this dynamic from very early in my life. And of course, that followed me to my professional career. And I can say that it's very hard, right, to establish yourself as a professional while you are, you are a woman and you're being questioned all the time. So I remember, even though when I was in university, there I used to wear like clothes like a guy, like guys, because I wanted to, not be, not standing out. And while I was in the tech environment, and also in the bank environment, that would be the same thing. The good thing on the other side, as being a woman, is that allowed me to explore other parts of my life, which sometimes I think that for men is harder. So I used to have and to ride motorcycles. I have several, and I did it. And I was, driving those, when I was in college. And even though I would come across as a tomboy, because, I'm very feminine, it was like this mix, and I had these two sides of myself. But what I've definitely realized is that being an outspoken woman in a male-dominated environment is not necessarily a good thing, and that you really, as a woman, you really need to develop skills that allow you to thrive in those environments. And there is still a lot of things to do in organizations in order to create this diversity environment. One of the things that I have indeed learned is that diversity is not something that one talks about because of fairness, or just because it's what it's politically correct to say. I think I'm a true believer that from a diverse team, better ideas arise, and that better solutions arise, and that as humankind moving forward, I definitely see as women to need to have a more space for participation, political wise as well. And I think this is very important for us, moving forward. I'm not sure if I'm digressing too much, if I answer your question here, Robbie.
Digression is very welcome on the Coach's Journey podcast, and you haven't digressed at all. And I just, a little aside, I've only read 2 books by Matthew Syed. He's like he used to be a table tennis player, but now he's a journalist and author. But both of them have been very powerful. The second one of them is Bounce, which I read, which is about deliberate practice. The other one that I read more recently or listened to on audiobook was his book. It's called Rebel Ideas. And it's about exactly what you said there. It's about the power of cognitive diversity. If you have a group of people who all think the same, they come up with less. It's a long, structured book with arguments and research about and stories about how they come up with less good ideas, essentially, than a group with more cognitive diversity. So I wanted to kind of just that came to my mind. But so what you said there, it's like it's powerful, and it's obviously, well, it's been a part of who you are and who you were. How does it show up in coaching? Those reflections, those lessons you've learned, like, yeah, how does it show up in the way you run your business now, or the work you do with your clients, if at all?
Yeah, so I'm still not clear about, about that. I mean, how I chose the clients that I'm working with based on that. Because, actually I coach basically anyone, right? So I don't have a bias towards, but if it's a woman or if it's a man. What I see, the impact that it has on my side is that I can more easily connect with women when they are in this situation. I am more maybe aware of what they are going through, and I might point out aspects that I know as woman, we tend to overlook. For instance, a woman that is being promoted, she might be, neglecting, negotiating a raise because, oh no, this is a great opportunity. This is good already, right? So she feels already happy, and she does not realize that it's part of herself as a professional to really address that, right? And that leads me also to meritocracy, right? Which was something that, as a professional, was always expecting to happen. So I can relate to that. So, oh no, if I have value, if I do, if I really go the extra mile, and I'm a very driven kind of person, oh, they will notice, and I will be compensated by it. I don't need to bring that up. So I think it impacts in the way that I can relate to what they are going through in that way. The same way that, for instance, I can relate with, professionals independently of their, race or gender, or, whatever, when they face, similar struggles, for instance, like moving from a single contributor to a leader, because I went through it, and so I can relate to that more easily. Again, it's not essential, but for me, I find that it's a facilitator, right? It enables me to be more close, understanding where the client is coming from.
Yeah, beautifully put. And it's like, I'm always aware, it's like, yeah, that, the piece you said before was beautiful about not bringing our viewpoints as coaches too much, because it was a really lovely phrase, because it condition. I can't read my own writing. I think it conditions what is possible to happen if we put our own selves in too much. And there's this beautiful contradiction, which is, if you have this experience, and in that moment, like the money thing is a great example, in that moment, something about your experience means you are more likely to see that than I am, or than somebody who hasn't worked in the industries that you worked in. It's like, it's not serving anyone to not say, have you seen that you don't seem to be talking about or doing this at all? Because, like, you have that, and you can serve and give that to that person in that moment. Also, as an aside, I love that point about meritocracy. I'd never really thought about it before, but I was just smiling to myself, because I was thinking, imagine if you take that idea and you put it onto running a business, right? Instead. So it's like, I will just trust that when people see what great work I do, they will pay me more. It's like, well, it could happen. And like, I'm always trying, I have a coach who I was always trying to pay more. I was always like, no, please, can I pay you a bit more? Because I feel like you're worth it. But mostly, I mean, if you think about going to a negotiation with a company to run a team coaching program for one of their teams, like the only way to get more money is to tell them a higher fee. You know, I mean, they might say, but it's like that idea, you know, there is some point, and it is different in organizations to running a business, but there is some point, isn't there, where we have to stand up for what we're worth in a marketplace, which either an organization or running a business is. Welcome to say anything in response to that if you want to. Otherwise, I'm going to rewind us to your business.
You are absolutely right there. I mean, especially, you know, as entrepreneurs, right? So we need to really ask for what we feel we are worth and we want. Otherwise, it's very hard. There might be exceptions, but otherwise you will not get it, right? Yeah, that you know, made me think that how, as a professional working in an organization, you should look at yourself as an entrepreneur. This is just a thought that came to my mind, right?
Yeah, lovely. Yeah. I mean, yeah. And as a coach, you should look at yourself probably, or as an entrepreneur, you should sometimes think of yourself as an employee of like the world, you know, or because that's like the same thing, isn't it? It's like the employee should be thinking, I need to raise my fees at some point, and the coach needs to remember, or the entrepreneur needs to remember, okay, I haven't asked for a raise for a while. Like, oh wait, I've been doing the same job for a while, but I've been getting better. If I was in an organization by now, I would have asked for a raise because I'm worth a lot more now than I was when I started. I haven't done that. I love that. It doesn't really matter. As long as you layer on a new perspective, it probably adds energy, or adds perspective.
Yeah, perspective and possibilities, definitely.
Yeah. So Susana, we've done lots of fantastic tangents from your story. If we go back to it, I think where we picked it up was, or where we left it was, you're coaching a day a week. You've got some private business going on alongside it. You're investing in training for yourself by this point because you're interested, and you want also the legitimacy, because who am I to do this? And I'm an engineer who doesn't have a psychology degree, and all those kind of things. What's the next, like, what was the next phase in moving to where you are now? What happened next?
So that, you know, lasted for, I don't know, maybe 3, 4, then 5 years, until, so in between I also continued to accumulate other roles, you know, without having necessarily the recognition, but I took on, you know, like change management responsibility for a project. So change management process program responsibility. I led some transformation also program. Well, and there, you know, we reached a moment where this organization was going through yet another transformation, and what they were offering me in the, you know, the new scheme of things were more, you know, managerial roles without the possibility of continue to developing my coaching practice, you know, within the organization. And I tried to actually understand whether there was a place for me as a coach in the organization, you know, like in Santander. But, you know, for them, they would rather have externalize that service. So eventually I said enough times, maybe that would be my first choice, that they made me an offer, so a very good offer. So, and I accepted. So this was in 2018. So when I finally, you know, left the organization, they offered me. They made me the offer in the end of 2017, and it took several months until it became actually a real thing. And it was a very, you know, scary, freeing moment for me then. The good part about that was that I have had the possibility to, during several years, to really testing myself and grow myself as a coach. right? But it was this, new world that I was going to enter, and that comes also with some fears and some excitement, but yeah. So this happened because I said enough times there might not be the best choice. If they have accepted that I continue to be a coach, I would probably still be working there or not. I don't know, but though this is what triggered me dedicating. So nowadays, so I created then my brand and my company, and so I dedicate myself fully to coaching nowadays.
Yeah,
and I'm very happy.
Yeah, and wait, say that again. Did you say you were very happy?
I am very happy about that. It was the
Yeah.
best decision ever. Yeah.
Yeah, good. And we'll come back to what your work looks like now. But of course, somewhere in there is when we connected. And I remember, there's a couple of things I want to say. I remember both. There's kind of two things. One is, and I remember this because I was reading these messages this afternoon, right? To remind myself, I haven't got that good a memory, but I might have remembered this anyway. I remember that thing you were saying, the fears, the doubts, the back and forth about it. But I also found this really lovely thing you said, which you haven't quite said now. So I want to check it if this still feels true. At some point in 17 or 18, when we were messaging, you said you'd been back to that Harvard Business School course that you'd done, some of your notes from that. And you said that some of the seeds for this change that you were kind of attracted to, feeling was coming, were there then. And you said that actually they might have been in some way there when you joined ISPAN in 2007. And so I wonder if you I don't know if that still resonates now, but I wonder if when I reflect that back to you, what you remember or think about that.
Well, what I think about it, so I haven't went back and read our messages like that. So I wasn't just to be surprised because so what I do know is that from very early on, the frustration of not feeling that I was getting the compensation and recognition that I deserved, that would, and I'm not sure how much you know about the consultancy industry, but it really, it's hard work. You work very long hours, so you really give a lot of yourself. And I was just thinking, so if I was, what if I was, working for myself, right? I mean, wouldn't that be, working better for me? So from a certain moment on, I think it was like maybe after, I don't remember while, but I think that I've always entertained this idea of having, of working for myself. Though, because I don't have that much of a net, that would really represent a risk for myself. So I've always explored different things. For instance, I'm a wine lover, and for several years I entertained that idea. And I eventually realized that I even took some training, some really interesting, and but I realized that part, the wine industry for me, it's like, pleasure and something that I, a hobby that I like to have in my life, but not to be professionally connected to it. I explore different possibilities, right? But sometimes my experience at least tells me that it's not when you really are looking for something that it manifests. Sometimes it's just like, when life decides to present you with something. Well, I know this is not very, does not put oneself in a very proactive, way, but I guess this is how it happened for me, at least.
Yeah, twice. Like, at least we can hear it in the story, right? Once with the guy, the opportunity to take that training, and again with this offer that came in the end. It's like, here's the opportunity.
Yes, I think maybe sometimes you might ask me, and I'm just thinking about that, maybe there were opportunities early on that that I haven't decided to take on, maybe because it was not the time. Now that I'm talking about you, definitely there were maybe possibilities, but for me the risk was huge, and so that I even not, I mean, I haven't even considered them as actually opportunities for me. Whilst, you know, in this situation, because I had the possibility to develop myself as a coach, whilst at the same time I was, you know, holding to my, you know, day job, really, you know, enabled me to get some, you know, ground and some confidence to then accept that offer.
Yeah. Yeah. And then maybe I wonder if you could say something about, you know, you said like, and I found a message where you said something similar, you know, the kind of the best decision possible is in some ways where you've ended up. And so I wonder if you could just say something about the experience of that, though, because it really did feel, looking back and reflecting on, you know, it was not a huge number of messages, but quite a few over the period, I don't know, in the course of that 2017, 2018, that sense of the challenge of that leap or that big change. And I wonder what your reflections are on that now.
You know, maybe I was also struggling with other, you know, aspects in my professional life and maybe my personal life. So the organization has at that time went through a transformation already. So, and if you've been part of some kind of this, you know, transformations, it can really be very hard on the relationships, on how the, you know, the vibe and the culture inside the organization is. So you feel, you know, that things maybe not be as fair as you would like. You see things happening around yourself that you're not happy with, that you cannot explain. You feel for yourself. And so I think this thing, when 2017, end of 2017, that was happening, I think it was yet another transformation. So there was a certain amount of uncertainty and toxicity in the environment, in the work environment. So that would, you know, was leading me to really think about this as a possibility. You know, because I would have then, you know, other coaches, colleagues that were, you know, doing their thing, thriving in a way, right? Whether or not I would be, you know, one of those coaches, that would be, you know, a huge, you know, question mark for myself, because I haven't, you know, I don't have any, you know, commercial or marketing kind of skills. Yeah, so I think what pushed me to really consider that might be to see myself again, not seeing very bright options on the horizon on one side, and on the other side, just tired and full of I don't know, frustration and of being immersed in that toxic environment.
Yeah. If you look back, this is a weird question, so feel free to ignore it. But if you, or just say no. But if you look back, if you could go back in a time machine, given what you've just said, and tap yourself on the shoulder, would you leave earlier?
I wouldn't be able to.
Because of what? Or why?
Because, you know, because as I mentioned, I don't have this net that would support me. So, yeah. I mean, my work is my life, and is also the way, you know, what enables me to make a living. So what I would do then? You know, just take a leap. I know this is something that, you know, coaches, some people do, but my sense maybe of survival is so ingrained on myself that I would not, I don't see myself doing it. I wish I would be my courage, but I honestly feel that it happened when it was supposed to happen.
Yeah.
And I'm very happy that it happened before I turned 50.
Yeah. Yeah. But and so, okay, perfect. So we've now got to this point where the offer is there, and so there is there is some net for you as you step away, and you've got this, like you said, that you're kind of tired from the I don't know, the environment, the constant change, and the options are not bright, partly because this day a week of coaching, which you've been doing for what, 5 years ish, 3, 4, 5 years by that point, is being taken away. And we know now, you've already told us the kind of joy that has brought.
Yeah.
So before we kind of get to what you did when you left and how that worked out, I just want to rewind. So alongside, for these 3, 4, 5 years, there'd been some private work, and I wonder just how much of that was there? How had that evolved? Like, how was that?
So most of that, my private work. So there was a team coaching where I had to take some days off,
Yeah.
and so to be able to do it, and it was a colleague of mine that invited me to participate in it alongside with him. So I'm very grateful for him to really do that. But when I was exploring my private side and with clients, the focus was more to develop myself as a coach, or gaining experience, being able to build the hours for the credential, for it to become ACC, rather than have this business focus, because the financial side was taken care of, so it was more about myself. Continue to be amazed about how how coaching resonated with me, and really wanted to continue to developing myself as a coach and pursuing that without having much in my mind rather than that. But
Yeah. And then so you then, well, and maybe I want to ask this now because otherwise I'll forget, or there might not be another time. And as part of this time, you were coaching to develop yourself, and you were also doing various trainings and the ICF credentials. And I wonder, if you look back on those, are there any particular learning experiences as a coach that you look back on that are the kind of the most impactful for you, or that you recommend to others the most?
I mean, I've been doing so much, so powerful work to developing myself as a coach. And again, I'm taking the liberty to maybe answering not exactly what you are expecting, which is to say that one of the things that impacted me more as a coach was investing in developing my self-awareness, and I did that through meditation and through mindfulness. And one of the things that really enabled me to be more present to my clients, to be able to put my judgment and aside, was actually to focus on mindfulness, on meditation. That helped me, Susana, individually, but I think it also has a huge impact in my work as a coach. To really be present, to really be aware of your inner thoughts, to understand that that it's also okay, right, to be so being compassionate to oneself, but also having the tools to not be triggered by things that might come in the session. So, and be able to be equanimous and decide how to act rather than react. So this is something that it was the most important thing for me. And that for me, Susana, because we all have our own backgrounds, we all come with our stories, with our challenges, with our dramas, and this was something that actually for me enabled me to become a coach.
Can you tell me, are there particular teachers or lineages or types of meditation that for you personally have been that you followed, or particular, and so maybe something about that, and then particular ways in for people who are new to meditation that you would recommend?
Okay, so for me, it was very important on, doing some formal training, like, initiation to meditation. It's very hard for one to have a regular meditation practice, but being in contact with a center, meditation center, and to have, for me, it still works today, which is I do a retreat every year. So I used to be 10-day retreat. So with Vipassana, if someone wants to explore that, I really recommend. And now the last year I did 3 days, and this year I'm going to do 3 days, not with Vipassana, with another one. But I really need this annual, retreat, so remove myself and really disconnect with everything and really be present to myself and what is going on my side. So this is what I can say. There are some tools, a lot of tools like Headspace or Insight Timer, or a lot of things available that would help you develop a coaching practice, but without having this accountability of, for instance, going weekly to a meditation center, it becomes even more difficult. So yeah, I think this is what I can recommend. In terms of inspiration and coaching, of course, I have different coaches that have been part of my life. So my coach from 2009 is someone that I still relate to.
And what's her name? I think it was a woman. What's her name? What's the name of your coach from 2009?
So it's Ida Shamisa, and we are still in contact, and there are different coaches that have inspired me along the way. So the ones that I remember more, presently, I mean, more from more recent times, is when I got my MCC certification. So I end up listening to some live coaching sessions, and it was really freeing to see how one can be, this master certified coach, and in a very different kind of way. So I end up listening to different coaches that had so many different styles and approaches, and that was really very liberating for me, because I will have my style. I will never be like this or that coach, and this was very inspiring for myself.
Yeah, and how did you listen to them? Where did you get access to these sessions?
Well, you can look. There is, online in YouTube. There are some available recordings. You can just look like MCC live coaching. There are also some I can then share with you.
If you would, and if there's any that you particularly remember or like, or found like that freeing happened for you, then yeah, let us know, and we'll put links in where people are listening, or at the coaches.
I can then share it with you. So there is this particular website platform where you have every month a live coaching session that you can attend to freely. And also, if you can subscribe to that website, then you have access to a lot of other recorded live sessions. One of the persons, a coach that really inspired me is Janet Harvey. I don't know if you heard about her.
No,
Janet
I don't know Janet.
And she has this way with words and presence that it's really very it can be very inspiring, but for me it was very humbling, saying, okay, so I do not dominate not English, not even Portuguese in the way that she dominates the the English language, and she really has this huge she's just this amazing coach, and listening to recording sessions from her were very inspiring in that way. So, but I can share with you like a couple of names, and also this platform just reminded me about it, and I will be happy to share about that.
Yeah, that'd be lovely. I think people really like that, because I think it's like I said with my group coaching session, right? It's surprising to me how many people have listened to that, and I think that people don't necessarily know that. I mean, I've never done that. I've never put group coaching session MCC into YouTube. Of course, as soon as I ask the question, that's the obvious answer, right? But to get the pointers, particularly, can be just really great, because it is, watching other people coach or listening, in a way, it's a little bit like, it's the equivalent of what I one of the aims for this podcast, right? Which is, there's this kind of black box of how does someone live and work as a coach. And the problem is, the reason it's a black box is there's no one answer. And so all we can do is have some kind of resource which allows us to like touch into a few different ways people do that, so that we can then see what's possible and also choose how we do it. And I got that sense that that's one of the things that listening to, watching MCC recordings did for you. Like, there's all these ways it could be. It's not just one way.
It's not just one way, and I tend to be very, like perfectionist, and I was really, aiming. So for being an MCC, you need to send two coaching sessions, recordings to be, then approved, and you want to be very, very perfect and really, nail it. And while I was listening to these different kind of sessions, it really was like, oh my God, can be so many different things. Of course, there is a commonality on those, but it can be so, amazing. And actually, Jenny Harvey, now that I'm mentioning it, she has also a very powerful on YouTube that shows a session going on, which is not led by her, and at the same time she stops it and says, so what could have we do differently here that brings yet another level? And I found that also very impacting, because when you are listening to that, you're thinking, oh, this is quite good, I see myself doing that, that's okay, good. And then when she adds on top of that, you say, oh my God, yeah, that really, it's better. Yeah, it's power. It's more, powerful. It's it's a learning journey. I think one of the things that I really love about coaching is that possibility that the journey is never over. You've never, can say, oh, I know everything about that. No, you are always looking for sources for developing yourself more, and things that you would like to dive into. There's so many things. I wish I had more time to do that, right? But as a coach and an entrepreneur, what I found out is that there is a lot of also work that you need to do, that it's not coaching.
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll come to that in a minute. But first, I just want to, because the MCC was quite recent for you, I'm curious, like, what was meaningful to you about achieving that credential, which is quite something, and also what was like interesting for you about the process?
Well, the process for me, it was a learning process. So I now can see what, being an SCC stands for, which skills you develop to be PCC, and what skills you can then develop to be an MCC. So for me, being an MCC meant that I need to move from being, demonstrating the PCC skills to a new level to MCC. And really, I think the thing that is more particular about being an MCC is you being able to deal with the unknown, feel okay with the unknown. So really let the client be in the driver's seat, and don't feel the need to just, take them to where you feel comfortable, right? So that it was a learning experience for me. Of course, I had a mentor. It's also part of the process. I really loved, so his name is André Ribeiro. He's also a coach and a mentor coach. and I really loved having him as my mentor. And yeah, and again, what was, I'm not sure if I answered your question, Robbie. Sorry.
Oh, I think you did. Like, I love that piece, that for you it was really, it's one of the, you not only answered my question, you answered the follow-up that appeared in my mind when you started talking, which was like, what is the real for you? What was the distinction you saw between those two credentials, those two ICF credentials? And I think you named it. For you, it was real comfort with the unknown, and that's a really like beautiful thing that, you know, I guess any coach listening can think about that as a like, okay, if I was to become more comfortable with the unknown in my coaching, what would be different? Really beautiful invitation.
And also, just to you know, to add on top of that, you know, for me, really the main difference is, I mean, I'm not sure, I haven't had that input from my, you know, from my clients, if there's a difference they see, because now I'm MCC. But for me, it really enables me to rest. Not rest in the bed in the way that I will not, you know, continue to developing myself, but just to feel that legitimate myself, to accept that I'm doing, you know, that I can do a good work as a coach, you know, because, you know, my as an engineer, you often associate, not as a leader, but as an engineer, you associate your value on, you know, your knowledge, right, on what you can demonstrate and deliver. So as a coach, I needed to reach this level where I feel, okay, now I have this, you know, I have this, I build this credibility, not as much to show to the others, but mostly to show to myself. I think this is where I found that it has impacted me.
Yeah, what's felt different then for you since that? Because it doesn't, you're right, like it doesn't really get more, you can't get much more legitimate in coaching than that credential. So what does it feel? How does it feel different to have that?
So for me, it just feels that I am more confident about what I do. Yeah. You know, so we often dwell on the, you know, imposter syndrome, and I guess I have that, right? So being able to achieve MCC, so say, I mean, it was not just me, you know, and I have others that vouch for me. So this is really, for me, it's the most important thing. So that, I mean, the most important impact that I see from achieving this credential.
Out of interest, I know that for me, with my imposter like self-doubt, it doesn't go away when I have the thing that gives me legitimacy, but it's more like I can just, when that comes up, it's like, nope, but look at this reason. Like an undeniable reason. Is that what it's like for you? Or has some of that just gone away now that you really have got that credential?
It never goes away. Altogether. Sorry. But
how annoying.
Yeah, but yes, you learn to manage its impact on yourself. So for me, if I can diminish the impact, for instance, crippling impact from, I don't know, maybe 80 to 60, and then maybe to 40, and maybe to 20. Wow, right? Amazing. It's amazing.
In every coaching session, in every decision you make about your business, things will be different with that greater freedom. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So you never totally get rid of it, but you can mitigate or reduce its impact in your life.
Yeah, lovely. So, Susana, we kind of hinted at it before. There's some other things in a coaching business that you have to do that isn't just coaching. And you must have discovered this quite quickly in early 2018, or whenever it was that you stepped out of the job. You had that net. but like in whatever way feels relevant, bring us up to date. Like, what did you do in those, those months, particularly the first ones, when suddenly you were in this place with this business, and how has that evolved into what you're doing now? And then we haven't actually really you haven't talked directly to how your business is now. So combine all that for us somehow.
Okay, so let's let's go to the past, 2018. So back then, what happened was that because I left that organization, not only I was fairly compensated, but I also for almost a little over 1.5 years, I had this fixed income. Small, but it was a fixed income. On the other side, what was happening in Portugal was that ICF Portuguese chapter was going through how do you say, an impasse, a crisis. And actually, there was this moment when I finally decided, or I was, someone made the decision for me, but when I finally was, moving into the coaching spectrum, fully all in, there was this entity that for me, it was so important, right? It was like a reference for me, that was, going through this crisis, and there was this fear about ending. So the Portuguese chapter was about to end, and I would say, oh my God, I don't want that to happen. So I kind of been pulled into the insides of that, and I ended up being invited and being part of the board of ICF Portugal chapter. So it was also a period of great change for the Portuguese ICF chapter, and it basically meant that I had very little room to develop my business because I was really fully dedicated to that. Also, I had the fortune, again, I say it's fortune, so you can recognize where this comes from, right? But I had the fortune to attend this international organization onboarding process, so CCL, Center for Creative Leadership. And from early 18, they had this client in Portugal, so I ended up being an associate with that CCL, right? So so back then I was doing some work with CCL, and I was dedicating myself to ICF, right? So, and when was I going to build my business? So along the way, I just decided that I wanted to create my brand. I did create my brand. I used some of the funds that I got from the, from the package to invest on that. So my brand it's Meaningful Works, and I have a website, and it's more like a presence. I don't feel that there is a lot of traction on that, even though I also have invested a lot since I launched it. But I was not investing too much in creating my, my business. And then, if you remember, then COVID hit, right? So it was still very, very difficult to have private clients. What I have found is that some clients from when I was, working still in organization, and came back for me, right, for a team coaching program with also individual coaching sessions. So it started out by an individual coaching session program for a person in the board, but then it became also a team coaching with individual coaching sessions for everybody. And that also helped me to keep afloat, still not investing very much in the business. And this is where I am right now. So I am just challenging myself, to reaching out to people, to networking, but having these organizations, international ones, with whom I work as an associate. And so all the commercial side of the business is taken care by them. So I feel I was, lucky in that way that I had this opportunity.
Yeah, luck and skill. I mean, like, I'm not going to quite get it. There's a beautiful quote that I heard last year about luck, which I can't remember. But, it essentially, it was luck. I can't remember who said this, but it's luck is the residue of design. So what looks like luck is also it's what comes when you've been practicing coaching and learning for 10 years, right? Is then you have or 5 years at first, then you have these opportunities that are created. I want to ask I want to come back to that in a sec, but I just want to slow down on the ICF piece a little bit, because around the podcast, like I said, there's a group coaching program, and if you're a certain members of that, get advance notice of guests and get to ask questions. And one of the questions was, someone noticed that in your LinkedIn or website or something, the ICF thing, and was curious about it, really from a point of view of, I don't know how much you know of this, but how, from that experience with ICF, how do you know, and I mean more generally, what do you know about how coaching is different in different countries, both in terms of the communities that are available, like the ICF chapters, and how coaching is in different cultures, if that makes sense as a question?
Wow, let me see. So I have the opportunity, to coach people all over the world, from Brazil to United States to Saudi Arabia, right, to other countries in Europe. So we are fundamentally all humans, but of course there is this cultural aspect that you need to take care and pay attention to. For instance, today I was having some coaching sessions with people from Saudi Arabia, and it's part of the code, the dressing code, that we have to have long sleeves. You don't have to get to show some skin. So, but apart from that, being an ICF coach, it means that you are pretty much clean on the way that you ask questions, right? What also I have noticed is that you need to also to be aware more about some particularities of their personality as much as of the culture. For instance, not that people are open to be challenged. Sometimes people are more, they expect you more to, mentor them or lead them.
Yeah. And can you say maybe something, because you said that part of the reason you stepped in with ICF was because you really valued ICF Portugal. So what was it that was so important about that had you step in that way?
Because it was the beginning of my journey. Started with ICF, right? So and I think it is very important to have this structure, this that you can hold on to, right? That also gives you credibility. And I think credibility is a huge part of me being a member of ICF still, right? Of course, and being and looking for this pursuing these credentials, because, as you know, Robbie, so worldwide, I'm not sure if worldwide, but I would say that worldwide, coaching is still not a recognized profession. So in order for you to be seen as respected and professional, I think it's very important the role that ICF has on that. That's how it was important for me back then. So I didn't want to be to have to reach out for, I don't know, maybe ICF Spain or ICF England. And so I wanted us to continue to develop and have an ICF representation in Portugal.
Yeah. And one of the messages, let's see if I can find it, I wrote it down. You, at some point in that transition when we were messaging, you said something about the coaching market isn't as developed in Portugal. And I wonder if, as in some countries, and I wonder how that is now, and if you were right about that, or what you've seen.
Yes, that's true. Back then it was not that developed. I think that, COVID caused a huge shift on that, because it was necessary. It was a tool that was there and it was necessary. Also because there is this proliferation of other, coaching platforms that enabled coaching to be more, affordable and then be accessible to more people. Also, one of the things that happened was that during that period was that I realized that I had some resistance towards online coaching, virtual remote coaching. And I said, no, in-person coaching it's the thing, it's coaching. And it was so interesting how I have, grown from that idea, because during COVID, like 100% of my coaching was virtual. And then now that we are, starting to also have in-person sessions, I just started very recently to have that, because again, organizations found that to be so much, convenient that they still keep on preferring, the virtual remote possibility offer. That, my first in-person session was so impactful, like it really, I think nothing beats the in-person kind of dynamic, right? Though if you cannot have that, having virtual can also, it's not something that you just dismiss, right? So I'm not sure if I answer your question, Robbie.
I'm not either, but it doesn't really matter because you said so loads of great things. Susana, I'm aware that amazingly we're coming towards the end of the time.
Yeah.
And so I guess to slow us down just before we finish, is there anything that we haven't talked about that you'd like to talk about before we finish? And what do you think are the key? Maybe do this one first, and if there's anything else, then definitely throw that in as well. But it's like looking back and thinking about your business in the last 5 years. What are the things you did that enabled you to step into those associate relationships, which have kept you developing your coaching? In a way, I guess my question is like, what are the things you did that contributed to that allowed you to have those roles?
Well, one of the things I think I already brought with me was that I was very, tech, how do you say, savvy, right? For me, technology is not an obstacle. So I'm okay with that. So, and I know this can be a barrier for many people. So I'm very comfortable navigating that space. It's natural for me. So the other thing, I guess it's just that, as I mentioned, so I'm very driven, and once I get, an idea on my mind, I just go after it. So it's really, and also be open-minded about the possibilities.
Yeah.
And one of the opportunities that arose when I attended the ICF Converge in Prague. I think it was in 2019. It was the last one in Europe live. So I'm hoping the next year is going to be also available. So that was also a good opportunity to connect with the like-minded people, and also understand what other possibilities, what other people are doing. So being open and curious, I would say that is something that enabled me to continue to be a coach and dedicating myself, fully to coaching.
Yeah, and in a way, I think that, just going back to that "I'm not a people person" thing earlier on, that sounds like that's part of how you do. You don't necessarily do networking by small talk, but I just heard you talk about essentially networking by being open and curious and being in those places.
Yeah. And then, for instance, I just challenged myself like 2 weeks ago, and I attended this event, which I resisted to do. I said I would go. I applied to it. I paid the fee, but then at the last moment, I was just saying, oh, maybe it's not that important. I would not go, and I would not do it. And it was really, really interesting. So I want to continue to push myself. So it was something around Portuguese women in tech. So things that resonated with me, instead of pushing myself to attend, I don't know, maybe events that does not mean that much. So to really push myself to be in things that I would, it's a win-win for me, whether or not I end up doing some networking or not. I feel it's something that resonates and it is interesting for me.
And that's a great frame, isn't it? That, like, do the things that might lead to interesting work, but only do them if no interesting work. If you only do them even if you get no interesting work, it's still a great thing to have done, right? That's a great way to think about it. And Susana, like, what's next for you? What are you excited about in the future, or do you have any particular plans for your work?
Well, one of the things that I decided in my business plan model was that I would be location free, in the sense that I could move into any place in the world, basically, and continue to do my work. Of course, that this in-person now kind of experience, more recently, the last month's experience really told me that this is something that I really would like to have more. But what I'm excited about is maybe this, I'm playing with this idea on one side, and on the other side is to do some, commercial work, some to really, push myself to have conversations, and to be able to invite potential clients to be open to the possibilities of coaching, and being able to seduce them to that, because I am sure that it's an amazing tool, and I will benefit from it.
I have actually no doubt that when you do that, there will be many people. Like you said, sounds like it's already happened a bit already, but 10 years of coaching in different ways, there's a lot of people out there who have experienced your work, and some of them will be ready to come back, and some new people will be really ready for it. Let's do that question that I half asked before, Susana. Is there anything else that we haven't talked about that you want to say before we wrap up?
I think we've covered pretty much everything, Rob. So I'm looking forward to hear this afterwards, and to see. I mean, because there were so many places where you led me with your questions that I was really like immersed answering them, and I was not really listening to what I was saying. I think we've covered a lot. Thank you so much, Robbie. It was really a pleasure to meet you remotely, but see you. And and yes, and I'm also curious to see the message that we've changed back then, and and also understand that and recognizing that it's a long way that both of us have come since then, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And
Everything.
you said some very nice things in those messages about my writing at different times, and I found it I realized I found it sometime around the time when we started agreeing to do this. I had this real flash of what an absolute privilege it is to have somebody like you saying such nice things about the things that I've made. So thank you for that. And absolute, very meaningful to me. And really excited to see what happens next for you. So yeah, Susana, thanks so much.
In touch. Thank you, Robbie. Bye.